Hey MCE crew, I'm out here today at an abandoned Nike missile silo, and you might be wondering to yourself, what does that have to do with money? Well, I thought it would be an appropriate place to start the discussion about how Joe Biden is nuking the housing market, and he's nuking your private property rights. If you own real estate, they are setting some precedents right now that you need to be aware of, because these precedents are eroding your property rights. Okay, and I'm not just talking about if you're a property owner who rents property, but if you own property too. They're making your property rights a lot less important. Okay, and the government, the federal government, is in the process of usurping a great deal of your rights, and that's going to have deleterious effects on your ability to build wealth. So let's get into it. Out here again, this abandoned silo. I hope the Russians and the Chinese have taken this one off the list, because it's not far from my house, and it's probably still ground zero. So if we have a nuclear attack, guys, me and the money changes everything headquarters are going to be taken out first. In any event, let's get into it. Let's start talking about this very important issue, your property rights. All right, guys, you got to pay attention to this video, because I'm going to show you how the government refrained from doing this one thing that would have prevented this country from spiraling into economic turmoil. They didn't do this thing that they should have done. It's really obvious. In conjunction with their illegal reestablishment of the eviction moratorium. Okay, and the fact that they didn't even mention this other thing proves what I have said for a long time now. The government, certain aspects of it, more and more each day, wants to establish a dependent society, wants to move more people from the middle class into a dependent class. Well, why would they want to do that? Well, because dependency for us equals money, power, and control for them. Okay, and you better believe, listen, I worked in DC. Okay, I liaised with these government agencies. I know how the game is played. I know how craven a lot of these people are, okay, in DC. You better believe what I just said is 100% correct. So go ahead, like the video. If you do not like this content, hit the thumbs down twice. Really emphasize it. And go ahead and subscribe if you're already a subscriber. I thank you. Okay, so let's get started. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Tuesday issued a new temporary eviction moratorium for areas with high or substantial levels of virus transmission. Now, I contend this is illegal, okay, because the Supreme Court came out and told them it was illegal. Not Tyrone, the Supreme Court. And the CDC, upon Biden's orders, they're coming back and saying, oh, well, this time it's different. This time it's totally different. It's not like that one y'all ruled against last year. I'm going to show you how that is absolute lunacy to assert that. The order comes after the CDC's previous moratorium expired over the weekend. Remember, it expired because Congress refused to extend their time before their congressional vacation. They said, you know what, forget about it. We got parties to go to, ice cream to eat. You know, we ain't in danger of being evicted. So good luck, guys. And then they rolled out of town. Certain representatives put pressure on Biden, and his big idea was to say, hey, let's reestablish that order that the Supreme Court just struck down. Pure genius. In any event, let's move on. The new moratorium is more narrowly targeted than the previous ban, in that it covers only areas experiencing certain levels of virus spread. And here's how it works. Well, let's talk about this first. So they're saying, again, this is all new. This is new and improved, okay? If I walk into a 7-Eleven and I say, you know, with the something that the guy behind the counter might be intimidated by, and I say, hey, how much money you got in that cash register? And he says, $100. And then I say, oh, well, give me 80. It doesn't make what I'm doing any less illegal or any more legal, okay? I'm still doing something that is on the books as being illegal. It doesn't matter that I don't go all the way, okay? It just means that I am still doing this thing, just to a lesser extent, but under the eyes of the law, I'm still committing a crime. So, how does this new order differ from the first order? Landlords and others with a, quote, legal right to pursue eviction or possessory action, unquote, may not evict anyone covered under the order if the area they live in is experiencing high or substantial virus transmission levels. So right there, the government has just said, screw your property rights, screw you and your property rights, and anybody who looks like you and your property rights. And we're going to tell you that not only are you not going to continue to operate under the legal terms of the rental contract you signed with this tenant, but it goes on to say those who violate the order could face fines, jail time, or both. All right? Who's covered by this order? The order covers tenants or residents who indicate to their landlord that they have, quote, used best efforts. Easy enough. Hey man, I used my best efforts to obtain rental or housing assistance from the government. A government that, state governments that is, that has been proved themselves totally incapable of efficiently dispersing these funds. Something like 6% of the funds have been dispersed. $47 billion, okay, that is supposed to satisfy these rents. So you're supposed to say, I have used my best efforts to talk with my recalcitrant state, and thus far nothing has happened, Mr. Landlord or Miss Landlord. The other caveat is after you've said that, yeah, I've used my best efforts, and you have made no more than $99,000 in 2020, or expect to make no more than $99,000 in 2021, you are good to go. You are covered in terms of your eligibility as a renter. Now, there are certain areas where this applies. Okay, so where does it apply? We talked about who it applies to. Let's talk about where it applies. The new order applies only, this is the difference, guys. Okay, Supreme Court, listen up. The new order applies only to areas that are experiencing substantial or high virus transmission levels. Now, that can fluctuate, right? It could be low over here one day and then higher the next. So this is a moving target, okay, for number one. Health officials define substantial transmission as when 50 to 99.99 new virus cases per 100,000 people have been reported in the past 7 days, while high transmission indicates 100 or more new cases per 100,000 people reported in the last 7 days. So you see how that could not include this municipality one day and then include this one the next, and how that can move around. The moratorium applies in the vast majority of counties, with roughly 61% experiencing high transmission levels and nearly 20% experiencing substantial transmission levels, according to the CDC. So 81% of the country, okay, just right now, okay, and the amount could grow. Who knows, right? So if that happens, then under these rules, maybe we get to 100% again. And voila, we got the eviction moratorium back. Now, I promised you that I would tell you what the government should have done in conjunction with this. If they were going to break the law and they really meant to help people, then they should have done this one thing I'm going to talk about in a second. But the point of this is not to help people. They're shifting the burden from one group to another. The point of this is, again, to create dependency. What happened was when Congress went home, they got a lot of heat, okay? And they don't like heat. Now, they're not reconvening. They have said nothing about reconvening before the end of their vacation. So they punted it over to old Joe, and Joe said, hey, I already told you guys, which he did. He had already said that the White House had limited legal options. But then I guess he just said, to hell with it. The Supreme Court doesn't have an army. They can't enforce what they're saying. So let's just put that eviction moratorium back in place. Now, the one thing they should have also done if they were going to do that was extend the foreclosure moratorium. That has expired, and no one has said anything about it. There's no talk of extending it. In the video we did a couple of days ago, we identified about 8 million property owners who said that they were highly likely to fall into foreclosure over the next 60 days. All right, that number, 8 million, that's higher than the approximately 6 million that went into foreclosure during the Great Recession in the years 2008 and 2009. Okay, so we're actually facing a larger foreclosure crisis, and these guys down in the Congress didn't see any need to extend that foreclosure moratorium in conjunction with the extension of the eviction moratorium. So these people are going to move further into that foreclosure status because now the Biden administration has said that this thing can be kicked out for 2 months. Sure, it's going to go to court, but the wheels of justice grind slowly. That's not going to be an instantaneous process. All right, who does this benefit in the short term? Investment firms like BlackRock, Blackstone, who are out there buying residential properties and renting them. We talked about that whole paradigm where they're trying to convince you that buying and owning, that doesn't make any sense anymore. You should rent. Now, it makes sense for the big investment firms. It makes sense for them, but doesn't make sense for you. You shouldn't enjoy all of those financial benefits that come along with owning. You should just rent. But BlackRock, Blackstone, and others, they're still buying. So how do you win this? Well, look, there are going to be a lot of people that are unfortunately facing foreclosure unless something is done on a grand scale with regard to forbearance and maybe reconfiguring these loans in light of the situation. However, barring that, then you as an investor may want to start looking at some real estate, okay? Real estate is a good hedge against inflation. We've talked about that in the past. And also, to the extent that you can find distressed properties, rehabilitating those properties and putting them back on the market for sale may be the ideal investment track for many people right now. You've got to do your due diligence, figure out if it makes sense for you. But you can bet your bottom dollar that that's what these well-moneyed and well-financed and very wealthy investment firms are going to be doing. They're going to be picking up properties as they fall into foreclosures. Now, in terms of renting, if you're a property, I talked to a property owner today who has several rental properties, and he said, I won't be buying any more. Okay, so we're getting into a situation where that prospect is looking a little shaky. If you're one of these big investment firms, if you're BlackRock, hey man, people don't pay their rent rather for a year, you can absorb that. You're phenomenally wealthy, okay? But if you are mom and pop and you got a couple of duplexes that you need to rely on the rents in order to pay the mortgages, and you know, your mortgage service provider, they can go ahead and foreclose on you, no problem. Why? Because they can just turn around and resell the property. BlackRock, Blackstone, it ain't so easy because they're dealing with a lot more money. You don't want to necessarily foreclose on a guy that has $20 million in mortgages with you. It might be devastating to your company, to your bank. And the other thing is, it's sometimes advantageous for banks to foreclose on smaller owners simply because, depending on where they are in that loan cycle, let's say it's a 30-year, depending on where they are in that, if they're in the beginning stages and moving into the intermediate stages of that loan, they're starting to pay less interest. So the bank is starting to make less money off of this loan. So wouldn't it behoove them to just say, hey, look, this guy's going into foreclosure. Let's flip this, get it under the auspices of a new owner, and start that interest-bearing cycle all over again at the highest rate, okay? This is what's going on. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope it has given you some insight into how you need to consider moving and fodder for due diligence. Guys, I'll talk to you soon.